This is another sign of the times, an analysis, and a commentary. Jeremiah chapter 47, verse 5. Baldness will come to Gaza. Ashkelon has been silenced, O remnant of the valley plain. How long will you keep making cuts on yourself? Ah, the sword of Jehovah! How long will you not be quiet? Go back into your sheath. Take your rest and be silent. How can it be quiet when Jehovah has given it a command against Ashkelon and the seacoast? There is where he has assigned it.
People have been asking me to speak on what happened. I've been traveling, so I couldn't do it, but you asked for it, so you'll get it. We are not to be against any people. The ministry here, Hope of the World, has compassion projects for the people of Israel and also for the needy of the Arab peoples. But we also have to stand against what is evil. On the morning of the first Sabbath of October, while Israelis ready to celebrate the finale of their autumn holy days, Simchat Torah, which means the joy of God's law, it was set to be one of the most joyous celebrations of the Hebrew year. Terror struck the land and the people of Israel, a terror unlike any other that had struck Israel in half a century, and by another reckoning, unlike any that had ever happened to the nation. What would be the worst massacre of Jewish people since Adolf Hitler and the Holocaust? The enemy entered the land by sea, by air, from the Gaza Strip. Thousands of rockets fired into the dwellings of the Israelis, bringing destruction as Islamic gunmen broke through into Israeli territory, coming in by vans, foot, motorcycle, by boat, by paragliders, and carrying machine guns. They entered into Israeli towns, streets, farms, kibbutzes, villages. They found young families in their beds and murdered them, fathers and mothers, children, old men and women, the most young and innocent. Those they didn't murder, they took away with them bound as hostages. They terrorized them, brutalized them, raped them. Among them were those who had survived the Holocaust. Young men and women at a party held in the name of peace were abducted, brutalized, murdered. Peace activists were murdered. The lifeless body of a mother of an infant was spat upon and paraded around the city to cheers and joy. Young Israeli families expecting to wake up to a Saturday of rest, celebration, and joy woke up instead to terror that they had never fathomed, entering into their lives and their bedrooms. In one village, they murdered 40 babies. Not content with murdering them, they chopped off their heads. They killed children in front of their parents. They burned alive innocent people. Hearing the news of what happened, Islamic crowds in the Gaza Strip erupted in celebration and joy, singing for joy, dancing for joy. So Islamic crowds celebrated and shouted for joy in the West Bank, in Europe, in New York. They celebrated in Harvard University and colleges throughout the West. On the day of Simchat Torah, the joy of God's law, when Israel was to rejoice, Israel's enemies were the ones rejoicing, and rejoicing in bloodshed, terrorism, savagery, and murder. Let's go behind it. Those rejoicing in the bloodshed did so in the name of Palestine. They say the land of Israel is Palestine. The Jews occupy it and need to be driven out of the land or murdered out of the land. What is the name Palestine? It comes from the Romans, Palestina. The Romans destroyed the ancient nation of Israel, or Judea, slaughtered countless numbers of Jewish people, took others captive into exile. And in order to erase the name and memory of Israel, they renamed the land, and they renamed it after Israel's ancient enemies, who were called the Philistine, or the Philistines. The Philistines were an ancient, brutal people. Goliath was one of them. The word Palestinian, what does it mean? It actually means Philistine. The word Palestine actually means the land of the Philistines. God loves all people, but it's clear in the scriptures that he gave the land to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and to their children, the children of Israel. The word Palestine, or Palestina, is part of a war against the promise that God gave and the will of God. To use the word Palestine to speak of the land of Israel is to take part in a war that goes against the word and promise and will of God. What about Gaza? The Gaza Strip, is there anything behind it? There is, something ancient. The city of Gaza on the Gaza Strip is in the Bible. Who lived there? The Philistines lived there. They particularly dwelt by the sea, the western coast of the land of Israel. Much of their headquarters match up with the Gaza Strip and its surroundings. The Gaza Strip were the headquarters of the enemies of Israel in ancient times. So it is again. What we were witnessing in the news was part of an ancient war. In ancient times, the Philistines launched attacks on the people of Israel. They plotted invasions. They carried out death and destruction from the Gaza Strip. So it happened again, the replaying of an ancient war. In ancient times, when Israel was struck or weakened, the people of Gaza or the coastal strip of the Philistine area would rejoice in celebrations. Well, they did it again. They rejoiced at what they saw as the weakening of Israel. They rejoiced over the killing of Israelis and the shedding of blood. Did they do so intentionally, replaying what took place in ancient times? No, they did it unaware of the ancient act. King David himself spoke of it. When the Philistines killed the Israeli king Saul and his son Jonathan in battle, David mourned over it, and he said this. He said, "Tell it not in Gath," one of the Philistine cities, the region of Gaza. "Proclaim it not in the streets of Ashkelon," another city in the region of Gaza. "Or the daughters of the Philistines will rejoice. The daughters of the uncircumcised will celebrate." So too God, through the prophet Isaiah, tells the Philistines of the Gaza Strip and its surroundings, who would celebrate over Israeli deaths, in this case, the death of the Israeli king, King Ahaz, "Do not rejoice, Philistia," or "Do not rejoice, Palestine, all of you, because the rod that struck you is broken. The Lord has founded Zion." It's all replay. Now, you've heard of Israelis being abducted, humiliated, abused, wounded, taken captive, hostage into the city of Gaza and held there. Well, there was an Israeli who was also wounded, humiliated, abused, taken captive into the city of Gaza. His name was Samson, and the end result was that Gaza was left in the ruins of its temple. To invade the homes of families asleep, to murder children in front of their parents, to kill their babies in their cribs, to behead them, what is that? That is demonic. It's the fruit of an evil, demonic mindset and a spirit that celebrates bloodshed and destruction of the innocent. This is the demonic seed that's been germinating in Islamic radicalism, into which children, as in Gaza, are indoctrinated from their youth and told that it's a glorious thing to kill a Jewish person. They point to a verse in the Quran about killing Jews and believe it's a divine thing. It wasn't just that the people of Gaza celebrated. Students at our elite Ivy League colleges in the West, such as Harvard, they also celebrated. Chapters of BLM, Black Lives Matter, cheered on the killing and the bloodshed, the decapitation of children. One chapter actually had a picture in which they glorified a terrorist paragliding into Israel to murder innocent men, women, and children with machine guns. But they said that they were for the destruction of Israel from the beginning. And that same organization also said it was for the destruction of the family. Hollywood celebrities that threw in their enthusiastic support for BLM could not even throw a crumb of support to the fathers and mothers and children who were slaughtered in their home. Jew hatred, like evil, is a sickness. It transcends politics, the left or the right. There were extreme right-wing groups as well that also blamed Israel. And so it was also marked by Hamas for that Sabbath day in Israel. But what exactly is that word that occurs in Psalm 55? The actual ancient Hebrew word, listen, is the word Hamas. The word Hamas is in the Bible. In Arabic, fire and fanaticism. In Hebrew, violence, evil, and destruction, appointed for 9/11. And it's what was behind what happened in Israel on that Sabbath weekend. Hamas, the actual organization of Hamas centered in Gaza. And that means in Hebrew, violence, evil, and destruction. So the organization that was linked to what happened in Israel was that. So let me show you other appearances of the word Hamas in the Bible. Psalm 74, "For the dark places of the earth are full of the dwelling of Hamas." Ezekiel 7, "Hamas has risen up into a rod of wickedness." Ezekiel 7 also, "The land is full of bloody crimes, and the city is full of Hamas." Psalm 140, "Keep me, O Lord, from the hands of the wicked. Preserve me from the man of Hamas, who has purposed to overthrow my goings." What else did the Bible say about what happened? And what does this have to do with end-time prophecy? And what about the mystery that foretold the day it happened? We'll get to that. Psalm 83 says, this. It speaks to God. It says, your enemies make an uproar, and those who hate you have exalted themselves. They make shrewd plans against your people, and they conspire together against your favored ones. They have said, come and let us wipe them out as a nation, so that the name of Israel will no longer be remembered. Well, that's exactly what happened. They conspired together, it goes on, with one mind. The tents of Edom and the Ishmaelites, Moab and the Hagrites, Gebal, Ammon, and Amalek. Philistia with the inhabitants of Tyre. Assyria also joined them. Amazing, because the people it speaks of almost 3,000 years ago are linked to these very things in our day. It includes Philistia, that's Palestine. Very centrally, that's the Gaza Strip, with the inhabitants of Tyre. That's Lebanon, the headquarters of Hezbollah. That is a terror group allied with Hamas and waiting on the north border to fire missiles down at Israel as they all seek Israel's destruction. Moab and Ammon, that's the children of Edom, the east and the south, who are also largely allied with the others. And Assyria, interesting, because there's only one nation in the world, in the modern world, whose name comes from Assyria. That's Syria. And it's also waiting from the east to destroy Israel. Now, beyond the question of whether this could be prophesying a current situation, the amazing thing is what it speaks of is, in effect, is now in place. Then there's the prophecy of Ezekiel 38 and 39 of a coming war to take place in the last days of the nations gathered against the resurrected, reborn nation of Israel. And though there is debate about some of the nations mentioned, it clearly mentions the land of Turkey, and Turkey just happens to be an enemy of Israel right now. Another nation it clearly mentions is Iran. And so it happens that Iran is also Israel's deadly archenemy that cheered on the massacres, is threatening to bring destruction now to the nation of Israel. Interesting as well, as Hamas smuggles in weapons with which to strike Israel from Iran and from the Sudan, which is linked to Cush, which is one of the nations mentioned in Ezekiel 38 and 39. And from Libya, another one of the nations also that is linked to the prophecy. Could this present conflict lead to a greater conflict, a war, lead directly or ultimately in time to the war prophesied in Ezekiel? It could. But now another mystery. In the book of Daniel, it is written that the prophet was praying concerning the nation of Israel. And after many days, he's visited by an angel who tells him that he was delayed in coming to him because of the Sar Paris, or the prince or principality of Persia. Now, the angel came to tell Daniel about what would happen to the nation of Israel, the Jewish people, in the last days. But this principality, which is demonic, came against the purposes of God for the nation of Israel. But spirits don't die, and this spirit is identified as the spirit of Persia. Persia still exists. It is called Iran. So in modern terms, it is the spirit of Iran. It's identified as a spirit that seeks to stop the purposes of God for Israel. Well, it's amazing, because it's this very nation that has now become Israel's dangerous archenemy and chants death to Israel, seeks nuclear power, and seeks Israel's destruction. And whatever role it had in this invasion, this massacre of Israel, Iran has been the chief sponsor of Hamas in Gaza, the chief funder of the organization that has assembled thousands of missiles and terrorists to destroy the nation of Israel. That Hamas was even in a position to do what it just did is linked to Iran.
Just change the letters around a little bit. Yeah, it's like, so, but the Philistines, well, originally, like I said before, originally they came from the island of Crete. I used to call it Castor, huh? Yep,
Right.
a long time ago.
Yeah, you were talking about that they were like pirates.
Yeah, they were like pirates.
Yeah.
They were called them the sea people back then. I don't even know if they had that word pirates, but that's really what it was.
Sure.
A bunch of pirates going around killing and plundering and messing everything up, huh? And then they kind of moved over there to what do they call it now? They call it Gaza, huh? Or Palestine, or whatever. They're just actually the old Philistines. And they mixed with all the local peoples, they all assimilated with the local people, with all the people was there already. And now it's just like, it's all mixed up now. It's like, and then the people are saying, well, we're going to need to solve this problem. Yeah, but they're not mentioning on the news about all the history of this place. This history goes back hundreds, thousands of years, huh? For thousands of years, they've been trying to solve this problem. What thinks anybody's going to solve it in a couple of days, weeks, or months? No. It goes back to even like I said, the Oslo Accords, and they thought they solved it with President Clinton and Yasser Arafat and, you know, all them leaders of Egypt and Israel back then, huh? It's like they even had a PBS special on it a few weeks back. It took like months or years to get all these treaties or accords signed and fixed, and hours and many hours of negotiating and diplomacy and all that. Many years of doing all this work, and everything, and never really amounted to anything.
Yeah, I think we talked about it's like a band-aid. Just put a band-aid on a big wound.
Well, that wasn't supposed to be a band-aid. That was supposed to be a solution. It didn't solve anything, huh? And just, a few decades later, it's gone back to where it was before. Now it's even worse than ever, actually. Yeah, it is worse than ever now, huh? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's worse than it's ever been. Because, back in the days of Pharaoh, all they had was spears and swords and arrows and stuff. They didn't have, cruise missiles and rockets and machine guns and big old bombs and stuff. No, I didn't have none of that stuff. So now it's even a lot worse, huh? Well, see, that's the whole story. Pharaoh, he tried to wipe them out, actually. But there's, like I said before, some always got away, huh? So they're not taking into context the whole story here of everything. Yeah, maybe that's what I'm saying, huh? Jeremiah chapter 47. This is the word of Jehovah to Jeremiah the prophet concerning the Philistines before Pharaoh struck down Gaza. This is what Jehovah says. Look, waters are coming from the north. They will become a flooding torrent, and they will flood the land and everything in it, the city and those inhabiting it. The men will cry out, and everyone dwelling in the land will wail at the sound of the pounding hoofs of his stallions, at the rattling of his war chariots, and the rumbling of his wheels. Fathers will not even turn around for their sons, for their hands fall limp, because the day that is coming will destroy all the Philistines. It will cut off from Tyre and Sidon every remaining ally, for Jehovah will destroy the Philistines, who are the remaining ones, from the island of Caphtor. Baldness will come to Gaza. Ashkelon has been silenced. O remnant of the valley plain, how long will you keep making cuts on yourself? Ah, the sword of Jehovah, how long will you not be quiet? Go back into your sheaf. Take your rest and be silent. How can it be quiet when Jehovah has given it a command against Ashkelon and the seacoast? There is where he has assigned it. And all these are more signs of the times.